He brings experience from the Arizona Conservation Corps, the U.S. Forest Service, and collaborative archaeological projects across the Southwest. His work centers on tribal partnership and stewardship in protecting the Great Bend of the Gila. And John Welch is Vice President for Preservation and Collaboration at Archaeology Southwest, where he leads landscape and site-based preservation efforts. He has more than 3 decades of experience working with tribes in Arizona and New Mexico on research, stewardship, and outreach. He previously served as archaeologist and historic preservation officer for the White Mountain Apache tribe. Please give them a round of applause, y'all.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Anita, for that terrific introduction. And inspiring manifesto. I had read it, but I had not heard it recited. So that enactment was powerful for me. And I was doing really well right up until the high bar part. Ooh.
Morning, John.
Good morning, Sky.
Can everyone see us, hear us okay? Cool. Well, this is our slideshow to go along with our conversation here. Corsu. This is John's title, so I'll let him read it.
A glimmer of hope for a truthful and sustainable Tucson sense of place. We already had place introduced and in the room, and it's a really important part of the work that we do at Archaeology Southwest, and importantly, and especially, I guess, the work that Sky and I do, where we get up every day with a sense of hope of being able to take care of the places that are most important to Indigenous peoples and have, that deeply embedded set of cultural, and historical, and familial values in those places, and to carry those forward. And the glimmer of hope is that we can all share that deep sense of place, maybe directly connected to the Indigenous sense of place, maybe just our own. And that has proved in the course of, I'm an archaeologist, Sky's an advocate and a preservationist and conservationist. But that has proved in the broad course of human history to be a really important ingredient in community and national sustainability, developing senses of place that are deep, shared, and that people are willing to defend. And Tucson stands alone in our view, and we're inviting you to consider the idea that Tucson may be uniquely even situated to lead the United States in recognizing and embracing its Indigenous roots as a very, very special and continuing to be special place in for especially the Tohono, but also the Yaqui, Yoeme, and other Native peoples that have overlapped territories with Tucson. And there's good evidence for that kind of hope as well. It's not just a pipe dream, if you will. Individuals can form senses of place pretty swiftly, but it takes a long time for communities to do that. It's variable, not fixed, it's not a science, but there's nothing more important than the sense of place that makes people feel like they're connected, belonging, and fundamentally at home. And so we thought we'd start talking about what makes us feel at home, including, encouraging you all to reflect on what makes you feel at home. And then look at some of that evidence and also look for inspiration to the artistic community that we're all connected to and take special, I guess I'll just say it again, inspiration from. So, Sky?
Yeah. So I'm Dene, Navajo, but I'm also Mandan and Hidatsa. They're from North Dakota, Canada region. And this is my home, Deneta. It means among the people, but it sort of associates the traditional Navajo homeland, which is the area in the yellow, and then that's our current reservation with the Hopi Nation right in the middle. But when I think of place, I think between the 4 sacred mountains. So on this map, you can see a couple of mountains, and each of them represents a cardinal direction, north, south, west, east. And I grew up on the western mountain, the San Francisco Peaks. The Navajo name for it is Dokosli. I think it means the peak that never melts, because it used to be that way in the past. No longer is today, but yeah, this is where I used to gather firewood for my family. This is from Walnut Canyon National Monument. If any of you have been there, I'm sure you remember it. But if you haven't, I encourage you to check it out. It's a really beautiful place. This is my house, or my home. Just off the screen there is where I grew up, among these cinder cones in Flagstaff, and you can see the peaks in the back and Mount Eldon there in the middle. But yeah, that's where I consider my place to be. And John, I think you consider Tucson to be your home now.
I think that's really true. I grew up in Denver in the 60s and early part of the 70s. And, Tucson, with its orientation towards Western mountains and, a river that runs through the middle of it, like the Platte River does through Denver, the Santa Cruz does through Tucson. It took me a while to figure out why I felt so at home at Tucson. But I think it was that and the fact that it's a complex place historically with a lot of ethnic diversity and multiculturalism associated with it. And, also like Denver, it's a nonstop, all-you-can-eat Mexican food buffet. And so all those things are really important to my sense of place and to making me feel at home. I lived for many years on White Mountain Apache tribe lands, also a very mountainous place. And don't think I would survive without being able to look at mountains on a regular basis and being able to feel connected to the bigger wild world that's out there. I think the key difference maybe with Denver, and again with many of the other cities that I've visited or spent quite a bit of time in, is that Tucson is closer than any place I know to that embrace of its indigenous roots and to recognition of its indigenous peoples as benefactors for the entire community and as continuing rights holders to the town and its environs.
Yeah. I'm not sure if many people here know this, but Tucson, the name comes from an anglicized O'odham word, the Tono O'odham Nation. That's their language, O'odham. The word is Tucson. So a mountain or Sentinel Peak is at the base of it is Mission Gardens. And that's what the word Tucson means, at the base of the Black Hill, because that mountain is, it's made of lava rocks. They're all black rocks. So at the base of the Black Hill is where Tucson gets its name from. And, we thought a good way to sort of capture Tucson embracing indigenous peoples and beliefs and people was through the murals that we have around town. So thanks to TucsonAZmurals.com, we have these really cool pictures. Most of these are downtown. So last year was the 250th anniversary of Tucson, which makes us 1 year older than America, which is pretty cool. And I think more importantly, you can't see it on the picture, but the caption on top of this mural says, Tucson, inhabited for millennia and established in 1775. Because, of course, Native peoples were living here much longer than, Tucson's even been a thing. According to the website, there's over 530 murals in Tucson by over 200 artists, which I think is pretty unique to our city.
I wonder if they included the ones that are on this building.
Maybe. Yeah, you got one behind
right here. Anyway.
Many of them include indigenous people. So in this mural on the left, you can see a gathering of O'odham peoples. In the middle, there's a UMA man in his deer dance regalia. And then you have some different spellings and interpretations of the word Tucson there. This one is just a couple blocks from us, right by the Raptor Canyon Cafe, if any of you have gone there for lunch. And again, you see the word Tucson. You have an O'odham person, I assume. What I presume to be Father Kino, and then you have sort of the railroad coming in a little later. This one I thought was really cool because it has the word Tucson in it, but if you look in the letters, there's an O'odham woman with a basket. There's some children there doing a basket dance. On the K, there's a woman gathering saguaro fruit. And so all of these letters have things that are meaningful or representative of indigenous peoples. I really like this one. Ueme is how the Pasco-Yaqui tribe referred to themselves as people. So in the way that I am known as Navajo, I refer to myself as Dene, and that means one of the people. And I think this one is my favorite. It's just really colorful and beautiful. You have an Autumn woman on the left and a Pasco-Yaqui man, Ueme man on the right. And in the middle, there's a ceremony going on. And if you look at the smoke coming out of the teepee, it is forming those, what I presume to be spirits of birds of prey or raptors, which are always important to indigenous peoples. They're bearers of good omens. So now I'll let John talk a little bit about Archaeology Southwest and our history and how we've sort of tried to educate people about the history of Tucson.
Leave it to the artists to lead the way in thinking about and showing the most obvious parts of kind of the essence of places and of, other parts of realities. And of course, indigenous peoples don't need evidence for millennia of occupation. But it comes in handy in other forms. Sometimes politicians and other folks do need that evidence. And Archaeology Southwest and sort of its mothership and progenitor, the outfit in town called Desert Archaeology, have been leading the way for the last 40 years in establishing that for millennia of pretty detailed knowledge associated with indigenous history throughout Arizona. Not only is that Black Mountain, Tucson, the namesake for Tucson, but it's also because of its underground, big igneous rock formation, the reason why the Santa Cruz comes to the surface and becomes subject to irrigation agriculture in this part of the stretch of the Santa Cruz. And so from there on down throughout this valley, Native peoples were farming and making themselves at home, building community here and demonstrating what sustainability can be like with close connections and good knowledge and respectful use of the land. This is one of the many, I should mention on the last slide that the last slide also says something about the evolution of Archaeology Southwest from really just the side of a desk operation of our founder, Bill Doley, and a few trusted associates to the organization that Steve Nash leads here out of this building, but with offices also in New Mexico and some personnel scattered in Colorado as well. But that, with help from lots of good partners and friends, the researchers that do the work and the artists that capture some of the best and most important messages that we have, and skilled editors to present detailed findings from archaeology in ways that are relevant and interesting to everybody, not just other archaeologists. We sort of blazed a trail that has helped put Tucson on not just an archaeological map, but on a map of places that, again, have deep and well-documented and respected indigenous roots and connections. This is the Tucson Wastewater Management Facility, which it seems like an inauspicious place to feature, but it's also looking westward into the Tucson Mountains to show more about what has mattered. And here and in other urban development and transportation development places, Archaeology Southwest and Desert Archaeology, we sort of fancy ourselves as kind of scientific scavengers. We take the things that nobody else will use or leave behind and try to move in at the last minute and rescue and metabolize the things that come to us from the past. In this case, the site called Las Capas, which has turned out to provide the evidence for almost 4,000 years of irrigated agriculture. It's the oldest evidence anywhere in North America of irrigation communities, irrigation-based communities. So here, a small advantage. I guess you can't really say it's an advantage over Mexico, where you would think this would come from, because Mexico was this place as well. Then an artist's reconstruction of what it looked like and the ways that it made the difference. Again, with close knowledge of the landscape, careful use of the landscape. This site just downstream from where the Cañada del Oro joins the Santa Cruz, bringing just additional nutrients, additional water in, and an opportunity to take a ditch, a canal off of the river in the days before it was entrenched. So building community right up through and until the time of European interventions and the turmoil and turbulence that has ensued, both in the natural world and, of course, in the indigenous cultural worlds.
Yeah, so on this slide, we'll see these, what we call the 4 R's. So relationship, responsibility, reciprocity, redistribution. And this is something that Archaeology Southwest has come to embrace when we talk about relationship to each other internally, but also with our partners, especially our indigenous partners. And myself and my former colleague, Ashley Thompson, she's Red Lake Ojibwe, Anishinaabe. And we went up to Bears Ears, I think when I was in the 2nd year of my fellowship here, before I became a staff member as director of tribal collaboration. And, you know, talking about places, Bears Ears is a very, very important place to a lot of tribes, but to Diné people. And those 2 buttes there are where the namesake comes from, the Bears Ears, because it looks like little ears. We drove up there, you know, it's about a 10-hour drive from here. And so it was a long time, and we had a lot of time to talk about where Archaeology Southwest should go as an organization in terms of partnering with tribes, but also, you know, how we should relate to each other as staff members or as volunteers, and even with our community here. And so we built this, what we call a model for tribal collaboration. Sort of colloquially, we call it the tribal collaboration model here. And we use it to sort of guide all of our projects, which are many and various. And at the base, at the foundation of that model is relationship. How do we relate to each other? How do we be in good community? And so we use these 4 kinship values that were developed by other indigenous scholars, and sort of took our upbringing as indigenous peoples, but also our education and our professional work, to give Archaeology Southwest not like a hard and fast, do this, and then do this, but more about this is the why, this is how indigenous peoples relate to each other, and this is how we should, you know, understand them and try to be in partnership with them. So
additional sort of proof of the multicultural roots of Tucson and its importance to all of us, then think about food also. And it's the Tucson community's recognition as the UNESCO World City of Gastronomy that brings together the traditional knowledge, the arts communities, and advocacy community for taking care of land, for taking care of knowledge, for taking care of community, and for having good stuff to eat. So Corso shines its light on Tucson in so many different ways. And so we're asking you to consider the possibility and the question of whether or not Tucson could be the American city that fully embraces its indigeneity, that continues in the programs that have been, you know, led by local politicians and far-sighted artists and all the rest of it, to return elements of ownership, including land itself, to Native communities, and give Tohono Yoemi people and other indigenous occupants of Tucson greater attention and greater voice in guiding all of us to think about what community means and how it can be sustained and what elements of it should be defended. We like to think at Archaeology Southwest we're providing good allyship and support for that idea by creating and publicizing the evidence for it that exists in the archaeological record. But that won't cut it these days. And so here in the United States and in Iran, where they speak Farsi, it's a good time to have some hope and look ahead about how we can not only come out of that darkness that was shown in the cave at the beginning of the introduction of the term, but lead all of us and the rest of the world towards some light. So we're counting on all of you to help do that, and we will continue to pledge to do our share. So I guess that's what we've got.
Thanks, John.
So.
I just want to flex that I took this picture.
That's fine.